All your life you've been told that to be successful, you need to be extroverted, outgoing, and loud. That if you want to be respected, noticed, or powerful, you have to speak up, take space, and assert yourself constantly. But what if all of that is completely wrong? And what if the truth was completely the opposite? Maybe you've noticed this before when you've walked into a room. You may have stayed silent, observant, and watched as the people around you got louder and louder, almost to compensate for your stillness. Maybe you've noticed how your silence makes others uncomfortable or even suspicious. This is because of a profound truth. The power that you've been told to chase with words already lives in your silence. This entire video is going to challenge everything you believe about what it means to be powerful. If you've ever felt like your quietness was a weakness, or that you were being left behind in a world dominated by louder, flashier personalities, then this message is for you. Because by the end of this video, you're going to understand something most people never realize. That silence, when mastered, is not just the absence of noise, and it's not a sign of weakness. It's the presence of stillness, of strategy, and of power. If you ignore this truth, you'll continue to pointlessly fight for attention in the name of being heard, and you'll never break free from this habit. But if you stay with me, you'll learn how to turn your silence into influence, your restraint into respect, and your invisibility into dominance. Let's start by addressing what you might already believe about power. Most people think power belongs to the extroverts, the talkers, the ones who command attention with sheer volume and presence, the ones who always seem to have something to say, a room to fill, a spotlight to steal. It's natural to think that way. We live in a culture of performance, of social media megaphones and 24/7 self-promotion. In this world, being loud feels like survival. But that illusion of volume equaling value is the very thing that keeps most people weak. Machiavelli, writing over 500 years ago, saw through this. He warned that the vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances, and that real power lies not in being seen, but in being calculated. Take a pause and think about that for a moment. Appearances are easy to manipulate. Loud people often get attention, yes, but attention is not the same as respect, and it's most certainly not the same as control. In fact, the louder you are, the more you expose yourself, the more people know about you, the easier it is to predict your next move, and crucially, the easier it is to take you down. That's why the most dangerous leaders in history have not been the ones who shouted the loudest, but the ones who waited, who listened, who revealed almost nothing until it was too late. Sun Tzu also understood this intimately. In The Art of War, he wrote, "Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt." The key idea is never to be loud. It's to be invisible until you strike. This is because quietness isn't a lack of action. It's a delay of revelation. Now start thinking about your own life. Think about the people you know who never stop talking. Do they seem more powerful or more insecure? And now think of the one person in your life who you respect the most, who seems the most powerful and in control. Once you think for a while, you'll notice that they barely speak. But when they do, people always listen. Why is this? The truth is, people fill silence because they are afraid and dependent on validation. Silence, when used deliberately, is not emptiness. It is presence, it's awareness, and it's a tool that allows you to observe quietly while others reveal themselves. In the language of warfare, Sun Tzu calls this deception. But in psychology, it's known as strategic ambiguity, and in everyday life, it's one of the most effective forms of control. When you're silent in a room, people start projecting. They don't know what you're thinking, so they fill in the gaps with their own assumptions. They talk, they chatter, and they give away all their secrets in doing so. Some think you're wise, others think you're dangerous. The point is, They're thinking about you, and that gives you the upper hand. Let me give you an example. Imagine a negotiation. Two people are arguing passionately. You say nothing. You let them talk themselves into exhaustion. And then, when you do speak, your words carry disproportionate weight. Why? Because your silence gave them room to stumble. It made them uncomfortable because you weren't just waiting, you were watching. In fact, modern research in social psychology even backs this up. People who speak less, not more, are perceived as more intelligent, more in control, and more confident, even if they aren't. Why? Because silence creates mystery, and mystery breeds authority. The loud demand attention, but the quiet command it, without ever having to ask. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but isn't silence passive? Isn't staying quiet just letting the world walk over you? Restraint is not weakness. It's one of the highest forms of discipline. Because it's easy to react. It's easy to speak out of turn. What's hard is holding back, watching, choosing the right moment. Machiavelli said, "It is much safer to be feared than loved when one cannot be both." But that fear, true, enduring fear, never comes from outbursts. It must come from silence, from emotional control, from the unpredictability of someone who cannot be baited, provoked, or manipulated. People don't fear loud anger. They fear quiet strength, the kind that doesn't flinch, the kind that doesn't explain, the kind that listens to every insult and says, without a word, "You don't matter enough to move me." Quiet people have this power because they never chase validation. They don't need applause, and they don't play games just to be seen. And when you don't need to be heard, something fascinating happens. Every word you do say becomes charged with weight. Imagine being the kind of person who only speaks when it matters. Imagine people leaning in when you talk because they know you don't waste words. That kind of gravity can't be faked. It has to be earned through silence, through patience, through presence. That's the power of restraint. And here's something else nobody tells you. The most powerful people are almost never the ones in front of the camera. They're the ones just out of frame, pulling strings, shaping narratives, building movements, without making a whisper. Power doesn't always need a title. It doesn't even need recognition. What it needs is leverage. Quiet people understand this better than anyone. They know that the less they reveal, the more they can influence. That the less they demand, the more others offer. Sun Tzu knew this too. The greatest victory is that which requires no battle. Imagine that, winning without fighting, controlling outcomes without being seen. That's the throne quiet people sit on, the invisible one. In a loud world, silence is a kind of rebellion. It is a refusal to compete in a game designed to reward noise over wisdom. And in that refusal, the quiet find their edge. They don't burn out chasing influence. They position themselves to be needed. They become the ones people go to when the noise has failed them. You might think of yourself as overlooked, but what if you're just building leverage? What if your quietness is the soil where long-term power grows? So how do you take all of this and actually use it? It starts with awareness. Every time you're tempted to fill a silence, pause. Ask yourself, am I speaking out of value or out of fear? Every time someone provokes you, ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Or is silence the louder response? Quiet power isn't about saying less just to say less. It's about speaking when it matters, acting when the moment is right, listening not just to respond, but to understand, to see what others miss. You'll start to notice something remarkable, that people lean in when you speak, that your opinion, once rare, is now valuable, that your restraint, your stillness, your quiet presence becomes a form of gravity. Not everyone will understand this power, and that's fine, because it's not for them, it's for you. So here's the truth. You were never weak for being quiet. You were simply misunderstood. by a noisy world that can't recognize power unless it's screaming. But the world is starting to change. People are tired of noise. They're craving depth, clarity, stillness, presence. And that's where you come in. You don't need to shout. You don't need to be seen. You just need to know this. Power doesn't always speak. Sometimes it waits. And when it does move, it doesn't need to announce itself, because the impact is enough. So stay quiet, stay sharp, and remember, the ones who watch in silence often rule the world.